When challenged, our biology pushes us to strike back immediately. In a noisy, modern environment, we feel an intense urge to jump into the fray, raise our voice, and defend our ground. We often assume that having the last word proves our dominance. But a social interaction operates exactly like an economy, and in that economy, your attention is the single most valuable currency you carry. When you snap back at a toxic remark or a subtle manipulation, you are spending that scarce currency. You're handing the other person clear, undeniable proof of your internal emotional state. By exposing exactly what bothers you, you give away your operating manual. You become predictable. And predictability is the exact trait a manipulator needs to map out their next move. Because predictable people are easily controlled, that instinctual, rapid snapback is actually a surrender of your leverage, rather than a display of your strength. True psychological authority operates differently. It doesn't rely on volume. It relies on the disciplined choice to withhold a response entirely. Imagine the heavy, physical awkwardness of an insult that is met with total, unblinking silence. The provocation just hangs in the air, completely unsupported. Aggressors launch these remarks expecting an emotional payout. When you give them absolute nothingness, you create a void that starves them of that expected reward. Mastering this kind of strategic silence flips the entire power dynamic. You end up controlling the interaction without ever issuing a single command. Human brains are wired by thousands of years of evolution to seek constant social feedback. We rely on those external cues to validate our standing in any group hierarchy. When you meet someone with strategic silence, you create an informational drought. You completely sever that biological feedback loop, which causes the other person's brain to scramble for context and induces a quiet panic. This side-by-side diagram shows exactly why that scramble feels so intense. When neuroscientists map the brain, they find that social exclusion activates the exact same neural regions as a physical injury. This literal, biological distress signal destabilizes an opponent from the inside out, turning the vacuum of silence into a tangible weapon. Behavioral psychologists observe a phenomenon called extinction. It is the rule that any behavior, no matter how deeply ingrained, will eventually die off if it stops producing a reward. You can weaponize this through what therapists call the gray rock method. The goal is to act exactly like a gray rock. You give brief, emotionless, incredibly boring non-reactions to toxic behavior. Toxic individuals use your emotional drama as fuel. They rely on your outrage or your defensive explanations to maintain their feeling of control. This graph illustrates what happens when you cut off that fuel. Withdrawing attention causes a sudden, sharp upward spike in toxic behavior, an extinction burst. But maintain emotional detachment and the pattern breaks. The manipulator's efforts plummet to zero and permanently flatten out. Gray rocking transforms total inaction into a highly active defense mechanism, suffocating aggression by cutting off its oxygen supply. Centuries ago, Niccolo Machiavelli documented how power thrives on restraint. He observed that leaders who maintain a calm, unreadable exterior generate natural respect through ambiguity. Silence weaponizes that ambiguity. When you withhold your reaction, you drop the burden of interpretation onto the person provoking you. Unable to read you, the ignored person inevitably tries to fill the silence themselves. They start projecting their own insecurities into the void, over-explaining their point, or frantically backtracking to find safe ground. By holding the space empty, you force an opponent to negotiate against their own imagination. You defeat them before you even engage. There is a sharp distinction here that we have to make clear. Practicing strategic silence is entirely different from giving someone the silent treatment. The silent treatment is a passive-aggressive tool used to emotionally punish someone. Strategic withdrawal, on the other hand, is a disciplined choice to protect your own boundaries. Someone using the silent treatment is secretly desperate for the other person to notice their anger, apologize, and comply. It relies entirely on a need for the victim's attention. True strategic withdrawal grants you an untouchable status because it doesn't need the other person to notice anything. It stems from a complete and genuine lack of need for their validation. Maintaining this level of control requires a foundation in an ancient Stoic concept known as apatheia, a state of profound emotional detachment and mental clarity. Practicing apatheia means when a verbal attack is launched, you simply let it sit in the room. You observe it without judgment, evaluate its weight, and coldly calculate that it is unworthy of your energy. Consistently applying this detachment builds a psychological fortress. You stop reacting to every external provocation and start moving through conflicts with a heavy, grounded stability. Eventually, the external world adjusts to you. Carrying an unshakable, quiet presence forces those around you to drop their petty games and adjust to your high-status baseline. True authority is never desperate, and it is rarely loud. Mastering strategic indifference renders every provocation entirely irrelevant.